Welcome to Backstage 421, the musicians only podcast, with your host, author, and music lover, Charles Campbell. Charles will have an awesome array of guests from many genres of music, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. By the way, Ray Mattis is the composer of this awesome intro music.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Backstage 421, the Musicians Only podcast. I am your host, small town horror author and music lover, Charles Campbell, and today I have a very special guest. I found out about this guest through another guy that I had on the podcast, Marty Britton from Bad Boy Drums, and he recommended that I reach out to this young lady, and her name is Megan Parris, and she's the lead singer for a group called Parris. So welcome to the show, Megan.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Charles.
You're very welcome. I appreciate you coming on. And one thing I tell most of the musicians I have on the podcast, my music is estrogen driven, so I listen to a lot of female artists, love female artists. And I've had a lot of guys on the show, and I'm like, I got to even this out. I talk about female artists all the time, and I have a bunch of dudes on here. So thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. So first thing I want to start off with is I did look at your Facebook page, and I watched a couple of the videos you have out there on YouTube. But what I want to know is, how did you get into the music business? Where was your start in music? How did you come up, and who did you listen to?
Okay, so when I was a kid, my grandparents were really big into the church and their church choir and their church music. My grandmother played guitar, and my grandpa, he was a mandolin player.
Oh, wow.
And I grew up in the church scene, and I remember my grandmother, I would sing with her, and she finally got me up to sing. And I was probably like 5 or 6, and I was so scared, so scared, but I was tugging, holding that dress of hers. And I think we sang Amazing Grace, and that was like the only song I knew by heart when I was little. And I sang that song with her, and from there on out, I sang at all the church singings with her and the big homecomings, and they would hire my family to come around and go to different churches and sing. All these churches would, and they had I guess it was called the Parris Family Church Band.
Okay.
But I got my start with my grandmother, so she was very special to me, and she really taught me how to sing and how to play guitar, and she's the reason I got into it, I guess I would say.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, my dad and brother are the musicians in my family. He plays a bunch of string instruments, so he can play anything with strings on it, basically.
Oh, wow.
So banjo, guitar.
I play guitar, a little mandolin.
Yeah.
I started out on piano, actually, playing
nice.
piano, and I was like, man, I look so much cooler with a guitar. So I was a kid watching my dad. My dad's raised me since I was 3 years old, and he was a bass player in an old like 80s grunge band, and he was just the coolest thing that ever walked. And
nice.
He would sit around in his bedroom with this old guitar and just play these little licks. And I'm about 9 years old. I wrote my first song just by watching him. And I would watch him, and he'd come in from work one day, and he was like, "Are you playing what I was playing?" I was like, "Yeah, and I know I'm not supposed to have your guitar out." And he was like, "No, it sounds great,"
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well, that's awesome that he's encouraging like that.
oh, yes.
Tell me about that first song. You got my curiosity peaked now. How did that come about? I know you heard him playing, but as a child, how did us?
I don't really know how to explain it. It was called What I Think About the World.
Okay.
And I was just a kid, and I wasn't your typical video game kid. I was always outside, and I never had any girlfriends growing up. It was always guy friends, and my cousins lived down the road, and everybody had their different views of things and thoughts, and I'm sure a lot of people said that little girl don't need to be running around with all them boys. But I guess that was what kind of brought it about. And it was just, there was so much going on at that time. I think 9/11 had happened, and
Yeah.
I was just a child, and it come out. It was crazy how it just come out. And I was like, wow, I just actually wrote something. I think it was in 2 chords. Like, I think
Okay.
it was like D and C or D and G. And that was the only 2 chords I knew. And my dad heard it, and he was like, man, he was like, did you write that? And I said, yeah, Dad.
Well,
And he was like, that's cool.
I think Elvis said a long time ago when he played guitar, he only knew 3 chords when he started. So, but hey, well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm a child of the '70s and '80s, so that was what we did. We were outside, and back then, I don't know if these still exist, but back then we had a lot of girlfriends that were tomboys, so they hung out with
Oh
us,
yeah,
and
they still. I'm a
and
true tomboy at heart. So
yeah, so yeah, I get it. So that's pretty awesome. So coming up and getting into music and finding your footing, tell me some of your influences in music coming up. Who did you listen to, and who did you gravitate toward as you went from a child to your teenage years?
as a child, my dad is a huge '80s hair band fan,
Oh, okay, I
and
got you.
growing up, my favorite band was Cinderella. I loved Cinderella, and
I'm a
that was
fan too.
just it was amazing listening to these guys, and seeing their hair. And I just thought, this is so cool. And he loved AC/DC, things like that. But Cinderella was definitely one of the '80s bands that I just couldn't get enough of. And I think I was like 16 years old. I went to my first concert, and it was Cinderella. It
Oh
was
wow,
Cinderella and Poison and some friends of ours named Lynham. And it was really cool. I didn't understand that I could do that at that time. I mean, I'd been playing in a little bluegrass band at that time, but watching that big stage and these guys up there, and I remember Tom Kiefer's hands looked like they were that long, just right. He would reach around that neck of that guitar, and it was
yeah,
just amazing to me. And my, I guess 80s will always be my thing, but my most influential artist of all time is Janis Joplin.
that's a good
I'm a
one.
huge Janis fan. So,
And I've listened to the video you had on YouTube, "Weak in the Knees," and I can hear how powerful your voice is. What I'd like to hear is more, you know,
oh yeah.
and I'm sure the audience will too. But you've got a great range, and I felt the power in my headphones that you have in your voice. So you're a really talented singer. So I want to throw that out there. So
Well, thank
everybody
you.
go check
Thank you
out
so much.
Parris Band. You can find them on Facebook, and they have a YouTube channel where you can check out the video I just referred to called "Weak in the Knees." So what I'd like to know is how I'll fast forward a little bit, and we'll jump around a little bit on the podcast, but how did you form Paris the band? How did that come about?
I tell everybody this, and it's so funny. I've played in bluegrass band for like 15 years. I did Hired Gun was my first rock band, and it was a friend of mine, Ziggy, and a bunch of older cats who were seasoned musicians. They put together a band just for me,
Okay.
and it was Ziggy's goal was to make me a rock star. Is what he said,
Right,
and
right.
he's a very special soul. And we did that for a little while, and then I got asked to join a '80s metal band, and it was like I was known as the what was it? Doc always called me the metal goddess, and I did a lot of the screaming and the high. I can do
Right.
the roaring and growling, but um, so while we were in those bands, I kept noticing like there would always be. I'm not going to call them Karens, but these ladies who had had way too much to drink, and they would come up to the stage and they would say, play us something we can dance to. And
Right.
so I met my other half, Jay. He's basically my husband. So
Yeah. Right.
I met him when he auditioned for Still Legacy. He auditioned as the bass player, and we hit it off instantly. It was an instant connection, and I was always that person, you don't date somebody you work with, you don't, in a
Right.
band and all that, this is going to destroy the band, and it didn't. We actually started talking, and he was like, "Man, we need a band around you."
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, "Dude, we got to start a band that has stuff that people can dance to." So we
Right.
created a party band together, and it just blew up from there. I never thought that I would have more than 10 people in my crowd. And when I've played at some festivals and things like that, it's so amazing to watch little kids sing back to me and adults and just hundreds of people watching me and singing with me. I mean, that's the most exhilarating feeling I'd ever had. And I said, "You know what? This party band thing, that's where it's at." So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we've
That's
been together like 5 or 6 years in this band,
well. That's
which Jay
cool.
and Jay and I have been together almost 8 years, so
Wow.
still going strong.
That's a great origin story of how Paris the band came to be. And I'm excited for you guys. Like I said, what I've heard, which is very limited, is really good. So I'd like to hear more. I don't know if you guys have any plans to put more videos up on YouTube or
Oh,
anything
we
like that, but
definitely do.
we definitely would love to see more of those. And just so the listening audience knows, they're in Alabama, and it's North Alabama, if I'm correct, but
Northeast Alabama.
Northeast Alabama. Okay.
Yes.
Um, and they do have some shows coming up, and we'll get to some of those in just a few minutes. But I do want to put that out there for any listeners in the area. You may want to go check them out. But I want to go back in time a little bit. You mentioned something else that's a little dear to my heart because my grandmother was big in country music, huge in country music. I'm talking old country music, Hank Williams Sr.,
Oh, yeah. The
Freddie
good stuff.
Fender, the old stuff, Conway Twitty, the real stuff. But something else you listened to as growing up was bluegrass. And you
Oh,
talk
yes.
about you were in a bluegrass band for a number of years. Tell me about your experiences playing bluegrass and how that kind of developed you as an artist. Because I love bluegrass, and I'll tell you a little story in a little bit after I let you uh, give me the answer to that around bluegrass and hip hop.
Well, it's tough to say. We started out, I guess, would be we used to have this little party in the woods across from my house, and it was called Honky Hog. And I know that sounds
Okay,
crazy,
no, don't to me.
but it was like a mini Woodstock all weekend, and my godfather put it on. And he had a band there, and they would have live bands all weekend. Nobody got paid.
Right,
It was just a good time to be had by all. You could camp all weekend and just have fun. And I always camped with this is crazy, my kindergarten teacher and his daughter. And they had a little duo and played, and we started going to this bluegrass thing called Foggy Hollow. They invited me to go, and I was like, "Man, I want to be like that.
yeah.
I want to play like that. I love this music." And so Jillian, Joe, and I created this band called A Quarter Short because there was only three of us and we were a quarter short of being a dollar. So
That's
uh,
good.
we made this little band, and that's where I kind of learned my voice and realized that I could do more than just, the old church hymnal singings.
Right.
I didn't know that I had the voice I had. It was always so mousy and just laid back. And I remember Jillian, she's still a lifelong friend of mine, and she would just like hit me in the ribs. She's like, "Belt it out." And so I learned how to do harmony through those cats. I
Yeah.
learned how to play mandolin and guitar better, a lot better than I was.
Right.
And it gave me an experience of getting to know. There was a band called the Distant Cousins for years around here. And Kelly Johnson, she's now in Nashville, and she's definitely one of my huge inspirations. And she invited us to come film for TV 24 for the Distant Cousins show. They had this local TV show, and it was so much fun. We used to love doing that, and we would run the cameras for them, and I just thought that was cool until they said, "Hey, Megan, why don't you and your band get up and get on TV and do one of your songs that you wrote?" And I was like, oh dear. I'd never done anything like that. And I was so scared and mousy, but she cheered me on and just done what she should have done of just pushing me a little further, and I did great. And I was so proud, but I was so scared. And when I got off that stage of being in front of a camera, I swear I have never shook so hard because I was so scared. I said, "What if my mom and dad see this?" And she was like, "Well, I hope they do."
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great story. And like I said, from the video I've seen, you've got great stage presence. So, and I know that probably took some time to develop,
So much time.
Well, let's jump back to the Parris, the band now. What sort of places are you playing? This podcast, people all over the country listen to it. So, there's likely to be some folks in your neck of the woods. So, where are some of the places that you guys play on a regular basis, or do you have regular spots you go to? And what do you have coming up?
We do. We actually play it. There's a place in Bessemer. It's called The Mill, and that's like our home away from home. And
Okay.
it's about a 2-hour drive from us, right outside of Birmingham. And that's one of the places we try to rotate every 6 weeks. The
Okay.
owners are fabulous. I actually called it's a husband and wife that own it, and he's my side trick and she's my bar wife. So we always I get along with everybody, obviously, and we play in Piedmont, Alabama, and it's called The Place Downtown,
Okay.
and that's a pretty cool place. We play in the summer. We play at Lakeside Grill in Cropwell, Alabama. It's an outdoor thing.
Cool.
We do Jax Fest. So I work for the city of Jacksonville, and I'm the only female to ever work for the street department in the history of this place.
Oh, wow.
And but the cool part is it kind of got me hooked up with city people to where they asked me, they were like, "Hey, you got a band. Why don't you do the fireworks show?" And I'm
There you
like,
go.
"Really?" And so I get to play with, there's kids there, and we throw out every show. We throw out all kind of crazy stuff off stage. You never know if you're going to get hit with a glow bracelet. You might get thrown candy. It's like a parade. I want people to feel like they're at a parade when I'm on stage because it's fun. Who
That
doesn't like
is
free stuff? So
That is cool. I just had a young lady on the podcast that hasn't aired yet. Uh, Her band, she's in a No Doubt tribute band, and they have this song called Bathwater. I don't know if you've ever heard that song,
yes.
but she brings out a bunch of rubber duckies and she throws those out to the crowd.
Oh, that's so cool.
So
I mean, I
you're,
feel her.
yeah. So you're the second one that happens to be a female musician that gives gifts to the crowd. So big props to you.
Thank you. We just,
Uh,
we love playing all over. We play at Chestnut Station a lot in Gadsden. That's kind of our hometown bar. And the other one would probably be Easy Street and Center. And that is one of the coolest venues I've ever played because the stage setup's really neat. But it's a restaurant too. They have
okay.
great food. It's laid back. It's easy. Um, the owner is actually a musician himself. He was in the Shane Givens band, and I had never met the guy until we started playing there, and
Right.
he is absolutely amazing and dedicated to the musicians that play there. And we appreciate that because there's so many times we've gotten dressed in our car or it's like, oh, well, let's go share one stall in the bathroom and try to
Yeah.
put our stage clothes on, because we give you a show. You don't
Right.
see us in what we show up in shorts and a ball cap. That's not how my band does. I'm like, you guys can't roll like that, and if you're going to, we can't do this thing.
Right.
But
Yeah, and I
we
saw from the video that I've seen, you guys do put on a real show. It's
we
legit,
try.
folks. So, and she's a legit singer. I mean, she's really good. Um, Another question I had during your time forming the band and you know, getting the guys together, do you have any, funny story that may come to mind? Something that's happened at a show, something that may have happened leading to a show,
Oh,
that pops to the top of your head? Sometimes folks do, and sometimes they don't. It's okay either way, but I'm just curious.
I mean, some of the things that pop in my head, I probably shouldn't say. So I'm like, oh Lord.
Well,
One of
yeah.
the funniest stories
Well, I
that
will
I've
say this podcast is not geared toward kids, so we
oh,
don't curse like sailors on here, but we do curse on here, so it's fine.
well,
Whatever the story
it's
is.
not a cussing show
Okay.
thing. I'm not a. I mean, I do have a mouth of a sailor, and
Yeah,
Marty will tell you that.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
can
yeah.
be professional.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
the one of the funniest things that happened at a show was actually on Christmas. We played at Chestnut Station, and I thought that would be a huge bust. I was like, man, there ain't nobody gonna come to a show at Chestnut on Christmas night. I'm like, who wants? And then I realized I was like, well, who wants to hang out with their family after all that time? I'm like,
Yeah,
maybe they
yeah,
need a drink.
yeah.
But we always learn Christmas songs, and we have a sax player. And so we learned Bruce Springsteen, Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And my drummer's wife is the merch lady. And we actually, the one cuss word, we call her our merch bitch. And she was the one that gave herself that name, and she has a t shirt that says it. Um, she was the one playing the bells for me. And
Okay.
she's just up there doing the bells, and I'm doing my Santa Claus is coming to town. And
Right.
this guy walks up to the front of the stage and completely drops his pants. I don't know if he thought it was the bathroom, but it gave Santa Claus is coming to town a whole new meaning. And I couldn't even sing. Like, I was laughing, and she and I were the only ones that saw it. And I was looking at her, and I was like, did this really just happen? And she's like, oh my. And my dad was working security that night. And my dad
Oh my
weighs
God.
like 110 pounds soaking wet. And so my dad's like, hey, buddy, you got to go. And the guy was like trying to give him a candy cane and all kind of stuff. And I was, please get this guy out of here.
Oh my God. That's a good story. That is a good
But
story.
that's probably one of the most priceless. I don't think I could ever do that song again without laughing. I'm
Oh
like, I
yeah.
can't do it.
Well, you probably stopped mid note. You probably had a coming out of
I
your mouth, and
mean,
you're like,
I was, and the guys, I mean, all the guys seen was him pulling his pants back up. And I'm like, you guys didn't see this? I was like, what were you doing? Where were you?
They were singing along. They weren't paying attention to him.
Yeah. I was like, Lord.
Well, that's the other thing. You got the vantage point of looking in the crowd, and everyone's looking at you, so they're not really paying attention to what's to the
Oh,
left
I
and right.
see so much funny stuff. I mean, people don't realize what I see from that stage. And a lot of times I'll see people, especially the younger crowd, they're constantly like this.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so if I see you doing that, I throw stuff at you.
There
I'll
you
throw
go.
like a glow bracelet or something and be like, should have been paying attention.
Yeah.
But
Well, I go to a lot of concerts, and that is a little disheartening because you see these things just all over the
oh yeah.
place, and everyone's trying to video and take pictures and all that, and not really enjoying the moment. They're looking in their phone, looking at the artist, and I'm like, you're missing everything. Yeah, but,
Oh
if you want to see a video of it, just go on YouTube the next day, and somebody's going to have 20 of them posted anyway, so you don't
yeah.
need to take it. But yeah, so. I want to go back to the bluegrass thing just a little bit. I wanted to bring up this bluegrass and hip hop thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of this band, but did you ever watch that show Justified with Timothy Oliphant? It
I
was
don't think so.
it's a detective show. He wears a cowboy hat. But anyway, they have a song that intros called Hard Times to Come or something like that. But I really like the theme song, so I went and
Oh,
looked up the band that did the song, and they're called Gangsta Grass, and they have merged.
wow.
Look them up. They have merged hip hop music with real bluegrass music. It's not even
Wow.
fake. They're playing the banjos, they're playing all the string instruments, and they got a couple rappers in the band, and they
That's awesome.
merged the stuff together, and they're called Gangsta Grass. So I'm like, I was an '80s kid, so I listened to metal bands, hair metal, and I listened to hip hop, and I listened to some bluegrass. And when they put those two things together, it blew my mind. So
I'll have
I've
to
been trying
check
to
that out.
I've been trying to get them on the podcast. They haven't responded to me yet, but they're called Gangsta Grass. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's some pretty cool stuff. So now that you've got Paris band up and running, are you doing any songwriting for that band? Are you doing anything? Any original music?
We do have several original songs. I have a lot of material that is kind of like on the backlog that I've written, and I'm
Okay.
bringing it out now to Paris, and we just take and create it as our own.
Okay.
Um, I do write a lot. It's just kind of like it's hard to write as a band to me, but that's just me.
Right.
I write better solo when I'm alone about because every song I write is either a true story, something that's happened to me. It's all kind of folky,
Right.
but rocked up folky, if that makes sense. But everything
No.
I write it tells a story, and if you pay attention, it's about real people. Some of those people know who they are, and they're like, "Oh dear," but it's just one of those things. We have a song we've actually recorded called "Imaginary Love" that I wrote, and I wrote that song when I was 18, and it's won a lot of contests that I did back in college, and it was pretty cool to get to win with my own original song.
There
And
you go.
probably our next song is my divorce song, and I wrote a song on the way to a studio right after I got divorced. Literally wrote it in the car, pulled
Oh
up
wow.
at Eric's house, and I was like, "Dude, I need a piece of paper, or either start recording now."
Yeah.
And he was like, "What?" And I said, "I've wrote a song. It's called Pour Me a Shot." And it is the coolest but craziest song because, as Jay puts it, I put every blues riff possible in that song. He's like, "Good grief." But it was so cool, and it's upbeat, and it's just one of those it's one of those songs that kind of catches you because you'll think about it and been like, "Hey, I've been there," you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, man, I'd love to hear that song. Maybe we have you on another episode and you can play it for us. But
Awesome.
that, yeah, I love to know the process of other writers. Like I said, I'm a small town horror author, and I know where I draw inspiration from. So I want to ask that question to you: where do you draw inspiration from when you're writing songs? You answered a little bit from real life and those sorts of things, but what is your process when you sit down to write a song?
Most of the time, they just come to me.
Hmm.
Um, there have been times that I was actually asked to write some songs for a friend of mine. He gave me a subject, and a really old song is called The Mill Village Days. And he wanted me to write something about it's called the Profile Mill. And that's where my grandparents live. My grandmother still lives there. And the Mill Village is where the cotton mill was,
Hmm.
which is shut down now. But it just talks about the hardships and what they went through. And I actually sat down with my grandmother and I asked her, she retired from the cotton mill. And I asked her one time, how do you how did you make ends meet? I mean, how did you guys do that? And she told me about clinkers. And my grandpa had these clinkers and they were coins.
Okay.
And you would trade them in at the mill store. There was a profile mill store. And at the cotton mill, they'd give you these clinkers for working so many days in a row or something. And they would walk to the store and get their groceries and then go home with those clinkers. And I actually still have one.
Oh
And
wow.
she told me it was all they could do. They did without a lot for the kids. And she
Right.
said, we might not always have food on the table, but we did our best. The kids always were fed.
Right.
And, my grandpa was my world. And I lived with my grandparents most of my life. And he passed away in 2013. And when I wrote that song, he was the local historian for our city. That song brought tears to his eyes because
Oh,
he knew it was
wow.
about him. And the other song I wrote that I was inspired by him was he showed me a grave years ago, and the actual song is called Harriet's Grave. And it's a very small grave, and it says behind it, Hoax, Forney, and Abernathy, which Forney is JSU, Forney Hall.
Okay.
But the family was those three families, and it said, to our beloved servants, and underneath it listed all the names. And Harriet was one of them, and her grave had a picture. Well, it was like an engraving of a woman, and it looked like she had a pail of water and a tree falling on her. And the grave's still there in the city cemetery. And you can see it. I mean, it's so crazy. I would have never thought I would see something like that. And he took me when I was a little girl and showed me that grave. And I can take you to it any day because I still know it. And I wrote a song about it, kind of like a mystery song of, what really happened to Harriet, because nobody knows. Nobody
Oh
knows
my God.
if a tree fell on her, and so that inspired me to write that song for the city of Jacksonville.
Oh, I got to hear that song, man.
And
That
it
story
was
just sent
just,
a chill down my spine, actually.
it's, it's amazing, the things that can inspire me. Anywhere I go, I find inspiration everywhere. I find it through people. I'm a huge nature lover.
Right.
I love animals, and I work with animals all the time, horses. I do snake removals on the side. So any animal, is a creature, that was put here for a purpose. And I find
Yeah.
inspiration in just about anything and everything.
Except mosquitoes.
Oh, well, yeah. I'll let those slide. But you could write a song about, a mosquito biting you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There could be a song there.
Or a horror novel.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, those kind of stories really, really get to me, like Harriet's grave. And this podcast is about you, but because you told me that, I'm going to let you in on something. I'm writing a book right now called The Piano Witch. And I had a guest on my first musicians podcast. Her name is Brooke English, and she's from a New Zealand band called French for Rabbits. She told me a quick story about she took piano lessons as a kid, but she was always afraid to sit at the piano because in the wood of the piano, she could always see the image of a witch. And I said, "Can I use that?"
Wow.
Because that story sent chills down my spine too. She said, "Sure." So now I'm, 20,000 words into a book about that premise that she shared with me. So
Wow.
yeah, you're right. You can find inspiration in a lot of different places. Wow.
Definitely, Harriet's grave
That
has
I'm
been with
very interested
me
in that. Yeah.
since I was a child. I mean, it's just over time, it's kind of gotten withered and weathered, and it looks kind of rough now, but it's still there.
Yeah.
I've taken people there because they didn't believe me. They were like, "There's no way," and I'm like, "I swear, you got to see it to believe it." And
Oh, the next time you're there, take a quick picture. I'd love to see
I
it.
will. I will. I can go tomorrow actually and do
I-
that for you.
That's amazing to me. I love that kind of stuff. Wow. Wow. Can people hear that song somewhere, or is that something you just play every now and then?
It's just something I played every now and then. I'm sure there's a recording out there. I don't know where, but
Okay.
I
Okay.
can definitely make that happen for you and
Okay.
send it
Cool.
to you. But
Well, if you can make that happen and send it to me, I'll stick it on this podcast at the end of the episode so people
that
can
would
hear
be
it.
awesome. Yeah.
Because this will air approximately 2 weeks after we record it. So,
Cool.
uh, you know, if we could stick that on the end of it, that would be a very cool add-on for people to hear, because
Awesome.
that is a crazy good story. I love that story. It's got my writer brain thinking.
It's
So,
just, it's such a mystery. I mean, what really happened to Harriet?
and
And
that's a perfect title too, Harriet's Grave.
I was like, and I kept asking my pop, I was like, did you know Harriet? And he was like, no, I didn't. And I said, well, does anybody know what happened? He said, well, there's stories out there that she got struck by lightning. The tree got struck by lightning.
Right.
Somebody was cutting down the tree. And so, I mean, that's all in the song of, what really happened to Harriet. So,
Right. Wow, that's an amazing story. Sorry if I'm sticking on that one too long,
oh,
but
you're fine. I
that
love
that
it.
yeah, that one
It
gets me
makes my
pretty good.
heart smile because it makes me think about my pop. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well, I had a grandmother that I love dearly too, and I think I was her favorite grandson. So I'll dig my brothers in with that a little bit, but yeah, yeah. So, is the band called Paris, or is it Paris the band? I just want to make sure I get that right.
it's
Is it
just called
just
Paris.
Paris? Okay,
Hmm.
okay. So with Paris, do you have anything coming out, maybe in a digital format that people can download and listen to, or is that stuff you guys are working on? Are you doing any
It's stuff
studio
we're
work? I guess.
Yeah, we're doing a little bit of work here and there. We all work day jobs, and it's funny, we're all government employees. So that's hilarious. I was like, we should have come up with a name with that in it. But um, so it's kind of hard to find time because we
Yeah.
work anywhere from 40 to 60 hours a week and then play all weekend.
Right.
And it's like, when do you sleep? So, but you know, we are able to share with each other and record at home and send it back and then master it, you
Yeah,
know.
that's awesome.
So that's a huge plus. Technology is amazing when you understand it. I do not, but
Well, I know enough to put out a couple podcasts every 2 weeks, so that's
that's
as long
awesome.
as this is
I love what you
working.
do.
Well, I have a horror podcast too, but I was booking so many musicians on my horror podcast that I had to split them up because, they're like, what do these people got to do with horror? Well, nothing. I just wanted to have them on.
That's
But
cool.
that's awesome. All right. Well, the other thing on Paris is I know you've told us where you're playing, what areas you're playing in. Do you have any upcoming shows in the immediate future that people can go get tickets for, or go to the venue to see live in the next few weeks?
Actually, this Saturday, June 17th, we'll be at the Mill in Bessemer. It's Jay's birthday party.
Okay.
And next weekend, it's June 24th. We're in Piedmont at the place downtown. So it's about 20 minutes from my house. So that's pretty cool. Usually I'm the last one home because I'm the furthest out. And
Right.
then we have just a massive 4th of July thing coming up. We've got that Saturday before the 4th. We play the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And we're actually off the 4th, which is crazy. But the 1st of July, we're playing a private party. The 2nd of July, we are going to be at Lakeside Grill in
Okay.
Cropwell, Alabama. And it's kind of an earlier gig, and it's right on the water. You can pull your boat up, just get on
Oh,
out
nice.
and do a little fishing while you listen to music. But we we're actually playing July. I'm still in June. July 3rd, we are playing Jack's Fest, which is city of Jacksonville, my hometown, and we are doing the big fireworks show there with Parton Rex, and Miss Janice Burns is my buddy that hires us, and we love Janice. She's so awesome, and she every year she's like, we're gonna make it bigger and better, and we've been doing that. I think this is the third or fourth year we've done Jack's Fest, and the kids love it. And this year, the kids always say that I look like Wonder Woman. And I've
There
had
you
so
go.
many people tell me that. So this year I'm going to surprise the kids by showing up as Wonder Woman.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And I thought that would be cool for the kids and let them get their pictures made and see Wonder Woman doing superhero stuff. And
That's right. You could put a YouTube video up of that. That would be cool.
Oh, I definitely will. I'd love to do that.
Nice, nice. All right. Well, one other thing I do want to ask you before we get to the end of the podcast is I want you to tell me about your bandmates. Who are your band members? What are their names if they're willing for you to share them, and how did you meet them?
They don't have a choice on it. So,
Okay.
well, I herd cats for a living. That's what I call it. I am the
Okay.
lead cat herder, and all my cats consist of a wonderful family. I treat this band like it's my family.
Right.
And we have Jay Jones, who's my bass player. Jay is, I met Jay through Still Legacy, his audition, and we fell in love, and we're still together to this day, almost 8 years later.
Nice.
And he's an amazing bass player because he never has any shoes on, and people think that I won't buy him any shoes, but we laugh because it's almost like he just levitates all the time because he's bouncing so much. People catch so many pictures of him just in the air.
Nice.
And I'm like, how do you keep time and rhythm doing that? But he's just really good. He's high energy. He's perfect for this band. And he helped me create it. And
Cool.
we have the one I call my twin. My twin is Les Wadley. He's our lead guitar player. And my twin and I, we met many, many years ago at Chestnut Station, but I didn't know who he was and he didn't know who I was, but apparently we met there. And years later, I worked at Chevalier Production for many years, and the guy that worked with me there, he was like, hey, I got the perfect, front guy for you. He was like, I know you want somebody that's pretty. That was my deal. I need pretty boys at the front, and I want high energy, and I want showboats.
Gotcha.
I don't really care if you can play, but
Yeah.
no, they're great. All my guys are great. But so my coworker introduced me to Les, and it was an instant connection. And it's so crazy because we really are kind of like twins, how we think. And it's like we're
Right.
long lost twins, but we kind of look alike, and it's creepy.
You might want
But
to get
it's
that
cool.
DNA test. See what's happening
Well,
down there.
it's so funny. He dressed this past Halloween. We did I was the pimp, and all my guys were my hoes. And so, since we're twins, Les was me. He wore my
Nice.
clothes, my makeup, and it was creepy. Like, he looked just like me. I showed a picture to my dad, and he was like, well, you look good. I said, that's not me. He was like, who is that? I said, Les. I was like, he said, no way. And I said, yeah, he looks just like me, don't he? And he was like, that's creepy. But that
That's
picture's
funny.
out there somewhere of me and him standing side by side in the same outfit. But and then we have Derek. Derek Reeves is our sax player, and my God, he's like a big brother. All my guys are my big brothers, but Derek keeps me grounded sometimes, and I have to keep him grounded.
Gotcha.
He's an amazing sax player. He's our tech guy, is what I call him. He's our lighting guy. When we started having to do tracks a little bit, he was our tracks guy. I mean, he's just the do-it-all. If something messes up, if you have a bad cable, Derek's like, I can fix it. And so he's kind of like the big brother / band dad. He's going to
Gotcha.
kill me for saying that, but he kind of keeps us all like in line of, okay, now's where you come in, and he's done the Kings of Swing. He was in the Marching Southerners at JSU.
Okay.
So I mean, he's an amazing horn player, and I met him through a good friend of ours, Greg Cheatham, who's also a musician. And Greg worked with Derek, and he said, "Hey, I got this guy y'all should try out." And so when Derek come in, it was just this little nerdy dude that was like, "I'm here for band practice." And I was like, I just kind of looked at Jay and I was like, I don't know if this guy's going to work out. And he was great. I was like, oh my gosh, he's really good.
Don't judge a book by the cover deal, huh?
Oh no. And it's so funny. Like I look back now on pictures when we first started with Derek, and he's basically an original member of the band. All my guys are mostly original members. Me, Les, and Jay are the true from the very start.
Right.
Derek joined like a few months after that, so I consider him original anyway.
Right.
And Barry was Barry, our drummer. He come in about a year and a half after we started. But yeah, Derek come in, and I look at pictures in the past, of us playing, and I look and I see this guy with this, real precise haircut and, just this little nerdy fella. And now I look at him and he's let his hair grow out. And I'm like, this man done got wild.
He looks like a rock star.
He is the rock star. And he shows everybody he's the rock star, which is good. I mean, we enjoy it. That's what I want. I want people that'll get out there and showboat. And we have Barry Hubbard on drums. And I remember Barry and I met through, he used to come to our gigs at Chestnut. And I would see him, and he used to play with Matt Harvey Band, and they were a blues band. And I used to love to go see them because my favorite band of all time is the Allman Brothers. Mm-hmm. And they played a lot of Allman Brothers. And I would see him, and he was a really good drummer. And I was like, well, I ain't going to steal somebody from somebody. Right. But I did. And I'm not that person. It just happened. But he initiated it. And we were looking for a drummer, and he come to one of the shows, and he was like, all right, guys, if you'll send me a list, I got this. I can. And I was like, whatever. But he's done a great job. He's in the pocket. He's a great drummer. He's a great singer. He is a wonderful singer.
Oh, wow.
And he was actually in a band years ago with Les. And I always get this name wrong, and Les is going to probably thump me on the nose for this one. But I think it's either Backseat Rodeo or Backseat Romeo. And I can't remember which one it was, but because I made fun of it, and I don't know which one's right.
That's funny.
These guys have grew up playing music all their lives in these big bands, and each one of them, I don't think Derek has ever been in a rock band until now. And like, he used to have his clean cut, and now he's in spandex and chains and cut off t-shirts. And I'm like, look at this. I was like, look at Derek now versus then. I'm like, what have we done to him? We have corrupted him.
That man.
And Barry's wife has become a great friend of mine, and she runs merch for me. And her name is Valerie Hubbard. She's an amazing singer as well. We always bring her up to do Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue.
Oh, yeah.
And
one of my favorites.
People love Valerie. I'm like, man. And she's like, I hate doing this. I hate doing that. I'm like, no, you don't. You love it. I was like, you do. She enjoys it. And we've got an honorary member of the band that I just have to mention. And it's, don't laugh too hard.
All right.
It's my future current ex-husband, and his name is Kenny D.
Kenny D. All right.
Kenny D is the man with the plan, and he is great at doing Bob Seger.
Oh, wow.
He's a biker dude. He comes up on that stage, and from day one of meeting him, I met him years ago in Still Legacy. He and I had an instant connection, and I absolutely fell in love with who he was and what he stood for. And he's always got him a big old glass of sweet tea at every show.
My man. And I like sweet tea.
He gets up on that stage, and people love him. And it's amazing that somebody, when he came to me one night after a show, he had tears in his eyes and he said, "You don't know what it means that you bring an old man like me up here
Yeah.
to feel that energy that you feel." He said, "Because it's an amazing energy." And I told him, I was like, "Kenny," I said, "we wouldn't have it any other way." And he's
Yeah.
head of security and an honorary member. So he's a part-time member is what he calls it. But
Well, he's a
he's,
full-time member in your heart, though. I know
and
that.
then, I can't leave out the most important member of the band is Patrick Grammer. And he's been with us for many years. He's our sound tech. And I'm closer to Patrick than I've ever been to my own brothers.
Oh, wow.
And Patrick and I have become best friends, and he lives with us on the weekends. I got custody on the weekends with him, but he lives in Georgia, so when he comes here to do shows, he stays with us, and he's an amazing person. We're always calling every other day, at least checking in on each other, make sure, "Hey, you okay, bro?" He's like, "Yeah," and then I'll get a call the next day, "You okay, sis?" I'm like, "Yeah," but you know, that's the thing about this is we have a family in this thing. It's
Right.
not just, buddies that got together. It's become one solid thing of just
Yeah.
one big family. I mean, our fans, our friends, we have I call them our groupies, which obviously they're not, but our groupies who come to our shows, I love them. I get to see familiar faces at new places and it makes us feel good. It's like you traveled all this way just to see us. I mean, it's amazing. It just makes you feel so good, and it warms your heart. So, I mean, I can't thank all our friends and our fans and our family enough for letting us make our dream come true. We're little guys, but maybe one day we'll get a little bigger, and I hope
Well,
so.
I've discussed this with most of the musicians on this podcast. That's one thing I'm very jealous of, and I admire all of you guys that perform for this. Is I wish I could get that feeling of walking on a stage and commanding a room. That's got to feel like, and they tell me that feels really, really good. So that you guys
It's
that get to do it,
crazy.
yeah, and get the feedback. Now I've been in a lot of crowds, and I can tell, when a band's engaged with their crowd, and it just
Oh
goes
yeah.
back and forth, back and forth. Now I've also been on the other side where it didn't look like they gave a shit if they were up there playing or not, and that kind of
Oh
sucks. But
yeah, we've
that,
we've had both.
but that's the exception. That's not the rule. So most of the time, I have a great time when I go see live bands. I want to kind of close the podcast with one question that I ask all musicians on this show. I usually ask it earlier in the podcast, but I'm going to ask it as the last question. And you kind of already answered it a little bit, and I think I know the answer. But living or dead, who would you love to have been able to perform with or perform with? Um, who is that one artist out there that you would love to collaborate with?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Well, if it's got to be more than one, you can list a couple. But
I got two.
okay,
Um, Number one female person would be Janis Joplin.
yeah, I figured that.
I would, God, I still feel like I was born in the wrong era,
Yeah,
but I think I should have probably been, on stage in Janis's band or, in a band very similar with her.
right.
But the male that I would love would be Greg Allman. I'm a huge Greg Allman fan. I actually got to see him once. Uh, it was amazing. I think he's amazing at what he does. I love his voice, his music. Gosh, it's just everything about Greg Allman and Janis Joplin. That is me in a nutshell right there. You
Well,
combine those two, there's me.
well, there you go. There you go. Well, Megan, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. I had a great time talking to you. Um, I will let the audience know where they can find you. I mentioned a couple of places, but if you want to share where they can find you, your YouTube channel or your Facebook page, wherever they can find Parris, let them know so they can go kind of check you out.
We're under Parris Band on Facebook. PARR. It's double R's. It's actually my last name. Parris Band on Facebook. You can look us up. Parris Band on YouTube. Parris Band on TikTok and Instagram as well. So we've got all the social medias covered except for Twitter, because I kept calling it Flutter.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm not a big
we
Twitter
don't do
guy
Twitter.
either. I have an account, but I don't ever log into it. Well, that's awesome. And I'll put links to all of those places in the notes below in the podcast so people can
And
just
we
click
have
on them.
a Reverb Nation as well, where you can hear some of the stuff we do.
Okay.
I think it's reverbnation.com/Parris7.
Okay. Well, you can send me that link and I'll make sure I
can
stick
send
it
it,
in
yeah. Cool.
I'll stick it in the notes so people can just click
Awesome.
on it. All right. Well, thank you again, Megan. I am Charles Campbell. I'm a small town horror author. You can find my stuff at valleyboypublications.com. I have 13 books out there. Number 14 is coming out on Halloween, so check it out. It's called The Piano Witch. My latest book is called Terror Tour, so it's available right now to purchase. And you can find me on Facebook under Charles Campbell Author, Horror 421 the podcast, Backstage 421 the podcast, and you can find me on Instagram under Charles Campbell Author. I think that's about everywhere I'm at, so I'm not hard to find. But once again, thank you, Megan, for being on the show. And
thank you for having me.
This will conclude this week's episode of Backstage 421, the Musicians Only podcast. We'll see you next time.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Backstage 421, the Musicians Only podcast. Be sure to tune in for the next episode. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Listener support links can be found below. Thank you for your support.